the biggest election year in history, but many of those running for office around the globe have a lot more to fear than just their political opponents. Politically motivated violence is on the rise, and Germany is no exception. Last Friday, a politician hanging campaign posters was beaten up so badly he had to be hospitalized. And now Berlin's former mayor was attacked and injured at a library. Social Democrat Franziska Giffey was hit over the head by an assailant wielding a bag containing a solid object. A 74-year-old man has been arrested. Now, these recent incidents are fueling fears about the security of politicians and activists here in Germany. The latest in the eastern city of Dresden was actually caught on camera by a DW crew. Vera Bergengruen is a senior correspondent at Time magazine and has tracked violent threats, harassment, and attacks targeting public officials in the U.S. and elsewhere for quite some time. Thank you so much for speaking to DW. Vera, the report we just ran of a politician being spat on and insulted, does that ring familiar to you?
It does, at least here in the United States. I think most people aren't aware of how common it has become for people to jump that line from just being more politically violent in the rhetoric and how they speak, and then actually taking action in the real world. Here in the US, it's become quite common from the lowest levels of government all the way to the top. So it definitely sounds familiar.
Who are the perpetrators? They're not all outright extremists, are they? You wrote a while ago that about 1 in 3 Americans believe violence against the government can sometimes be justified.
It's a surprisingly and kind of shockingly common viewpoint now. I think it's become much more common since the pandemic, when I think with the lockdowns and a lot of kind of the things that were happening then, people really felt it was okay to take matters into their own hands and not just protest, but really intimidate and harass people. And here in the United States with the 2020 election, it also became much more common to, if you were angry about something, instead of doing what you maybe used to do, now it was okay to show up with a gun and to actually make good on your threats to, again, abuse or physically assault someone. Here in the United States, it's definitely been on the rise, and we're seeing that across the whole globe.
You've, of course, looked at this from many angles and in many places. Can you identify common denominators spanning regions and states, causes, triggers?
I think one of the things that every expert I've spoken to has said is that people take their cue from politicians. And, if we even look back 10 years ago, it wasn't as common for politicians, whether it's on social media or in their speeches, to use particular words and particular imagery, which is actually quite violent. The need to take things back, the need to blow things up. And this kind of language, people are taking it somewhat literally. There's always, as you mentioned, there's always people more on the fringes who are willing to take action. But we're seeing it just kind of in general. I mean, people calling lawmakers, calling health workers, election workers, librarians here in the United States, anyone who works for the government, and being very intimidating and harassing them. And, that's a pretty common factor, I think, is violent language really translating to real world action.
You have spoken to many people affected by this kind of violence. And one of the people you interviewed said something truly shocking. Local leadership was becoming a full contact sport. How do they tend to deal with the harassment, the threats, and the attacks?
It's here, at least, it's pretty difficult to expect someone, especially in a local, lower level job, to want to continue doing this. I mean, a lot of them have had to hire private security. They've had to, move their kids or their spouse out of their house because, their address is posted online and they're getting threats. And if you are, a local election worker, if you are a state level lawmaker, it might just not be worth it. I mean, on the upper level here, if you're on Capitol Hill or at the White House, you have all this extra protection. You have Secret Service, you have, police who can help you. But for most local level people, what we're actually seeing is just people leaving the jobs. I mean, there's been a really big exodus in the last 4 years here of people just leaving these positions largely because of threats of violence and harassment.
We only have about a minute left, but I don't want to leave on that note. Where do we go from here? Is this just a grim new reality, we have to live in, or can this serve as a call to action?
I have heard on the kind of more positive side that I think more people at least are very much aware of this, and that it's become a cycle where when there is this kind of intimidation, people are much more aware of where to go, and they are getting better at distinguishing between a real threat and, and who to take it to. So at least some of that fear isn't there. But, I think, like, as you mentioned earlier, this year is going to be a real litmus test of how far that can go.
That was Vera Bergengruen, Senior Correspondent for Time Magazine. Thank you so much for those insights.
Thank you.
I'm pleased to welcome Axel Reitz now. He's a former neo-Nazi who runs a de-radicalization and anti-extremism program here in Germany. Thank you so much for joining us, Axel. Now, reports of politically motivated attacks keep mounting. What do you think is behind this rise in political violence?
Yeah, there are a lot of points I could point out now, but I guess, we're living in complicated times, and right-wing rebel rousers have it very easy to show somebody who is in their minds responsible for the feelings of instability and insecurity the people have. And so the people, turn to rage out against the ones they think who are responsible for their feelings of insecurity and instability in Germany.
But it seems to be a surge, right? This wasn't the case 5-10 years ago, maybe. So why are we seeing more of this than before?
Yeah, I guess we're living in times of digitalization, and most of the people build their mindsets on Twitter or X, like it's called now, or on Facebook slogans. They don't go deep. They don't make a difference between fake news and rebel rousing and something like that, and real news. And so they have a mindset which is filled with fake news, with rage, and with the feeling that they are supposed to do something against these things. And they turn to violence then. And 10 years or 20 years before, it wasn't so easy to gain the fake news. It wasn't so easy to gain the rebel rousing. And we're living now in times where this is very normal, unfortunately.
The scene that you, I suppose, are following more closely is the extreme right here in Germany. Can you tell us how that has evolved in the past years?
Yeah, we have a new party, the AfD, the Alternative for Germany, like it's called. And this party started as a right party with conservative points of views, but it's now a very, very extreme and radical party. And they're spreading hate, they're spreading fake news, and they're spreading something they call fundamental opposition against the democracy and against the liberal thinkings we have in our society. And this is a great danger because they infect many, many people who don't realize in the first moment that they don't want to help Germany or to make things better, but to destroy this democracy and to destroy the liberal society we're living in.
How close are the ties between, the AfD, far-right political elements, and the neo-Nazi scene?
Yeah, like I said, every neo-Nazi is a right-wing extremist, but not every right-wing extremist is a neo-Nazi. The AfD is not a neo-Nazi party, but neo-Nazis are working together with the AfD members of the parliament. They make neo-Nazis their workers, their assistants, and so on. So there isn't a great difference in the working, but in the output. Yeah, the AfD does not have the agenda the neo-Nazis have. They don't say we want a Fourth Reich, we don't want to change history, they don't say we like Adolf Hitler. They are making right-wing policy without neo-Nazi standards.
Now, getting back to this politically motivated violence, everybody's asking, of course, what can we do to stop it? So as someone who was an active neo-Nazi, what do you think needs to be done to prevent politically motivated attacks like these and, restore faith in politics, in democracy, in institutions? What was it in your case, maybe also, that convinced you to kind of, leave that scene?
Yeah, it's a long way. It's not like we can do a sprint and I say, well, we have to do this and that and everything will be fine, because the situation is very complicated and there are many influences. Yeah, but the first thing I can say, what is better than to react on radicalization is to prevent it. Yeah, I'm a certified violence prevention trainer, and I go to schools and make workshops with children and with youngsters and teenagers. So I hope that they learn from my faults and that they see what hate and what violence makes with people and society, and that it's no good before they act like that. Yeah, and we should do this more often. We should do more for our children. We should teach them media competence so that they have understanding that not everybody who shares news with them shares the reality, but a point of view. So they could make a difference, and so they become more proper to act with radicalization and fake news and so on. And yeah, in my case, I was a neo-Nazi, and in this extremist groups, I became at the end very depressed, because what I wanted to be and what I wanted to see in these scenes doesn't fit with the reality. And when this reality doesn't fit for me anymore, I had a breakdown, and I go to the state who has programs for extremists to help them getting out, to help them to gain responsibility for their lives and their actions. Yeah, I did that. It was a very long and hard way. And it showed me that this democracy I hated and I fought against is way, way, way better. Yeah, better than everything I would have achieved with my hate and my violent and my National Socialist ideals. Yeah, and so I guess it's a long way, but I believe that democracy is better, and we should teach that, and we should be proud to live in a state which showed the people, hey, you can live here in freedom. You can make your individual choices. No leader, no party, no religion will make you a dictate what you have to do and not to do. So we should more put freedom and what we have, in the focus instead of going against hate and going against violence. Yeah. That's very important too. But we should show more what we are standing for and that it's better than all the rest.
It's a remarkable journey you described there. That was Axel Reitz, anti-extremism advocate. Such an important work you do. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.
I'm joined now by Paula Pichota, a member of the German Parliament for the Greens. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us. We've just seen in our last report this attack on one of your party members in Dresden. That's, of course, a city in the state of Saxony, where you also represent a constituency. I'd like to start, if you could, with your reaction to this attack.
Actually, all of us have experienced incidents like that very often, but usually they are not caught in cameras. So that's quite unreal to see it on TV. But honestly, every one of us has seen and felt and experienced such incidents for many times and for many years. And although the frequency and visibility have increased, that is not a new phenomenon, especially not in East Germany.
Are you surprised by the kind of language that you heard in that report, where we had a group shouting what is in Germany a banned Nazi slogan?
No, not at all, because that's not new as well. What I just said, visibility and frequency have increased. However, the quality is something we experienced like 10, 20, 30 years ago as well. Those people, they went to school with people like me. Most of us have people like that in our families. Relatives of us are supporting parties that actually support anti-democratic parties, and that's nothing new for us. But what is new is that the media is now watching, the entire nation is watching, and actually loads of politicians, also conservative politicians, are now calling for solidarity, because that is a threat to democracy.
And yet this has just happened just days after two other attacks on politicians, which is not something that you typically see in German newspapers. I'd like to ask you, you hinted at this not being surprising in Eastern Germany and this division between East and West. For our international audience, why is it that you would not be surprised to see this kind of language there?
That's actually quite a complicated question because so many factors contribute to this phenomenon. However, the East German democracy is still quite a young democracy. It's only been 30 years since the peaceful revolution in East Germany, and all parties, members of parties, civil society have not had as much decades in democracy as in West Germany. However, we had a lot of problems in the 90s. When democracy was young, there was not a huge economic upturn. In fact, loads of people became unemployed. The economy was bad, and that's why democracy had a bad start in East Germany. And also, security forces for a very long time did not take the threat from the right very seriously, and that was actually a very big problem for many years, especially in the state of Saxony, but also in Thuringia, Brandenburg, etc. However, this phenomenon is not a phenomenon that can only be seen in East Germany. We've had attacks on politicians in other West German states as well. This is a national problem now, and that might be a difference compared to the 90s in East Germany.
So let's turn to the security forces and how well Germany is equipped to handle this kind of political violence. Do you feel that there are enough institutions in place in Germany to deal with it?
Actually, every nation's security forces would be overwhelmed by the task that is now on our hand. It takes civil society, because security forces will never be enough. No state is able to have that many forces in the security forces to protect every politician, every day, every hour. It takes an active civil society, especially in East Germany now, to actually achieve that politicians can voice their opinions, can do politics in a safe environment, because if it's not safe, loads of people will opt out of politics. And when that happens, voters have less opportunity to choose from a wide variety of candidates. And that's why politics gets worse if politicians are not safe. And that's why it's in the interest of the entire society to have conditions in which politicians from the democratic parties can actually act and do politics in a safe environment. And that is something that is currently not the case in Saxony. But security forces alone will never be able to achieve that safety.
Thank you very much for joining us today on DW News. That is Paula Pichota, Member of Parliament
Thank you.
for the Greens.